Coming off of their excellent New Japan Cup USA Tournament tour and a good LA Dojo showcase event, New Japan Strong comes back with Collision 2021 and unfortunately follows a downward trajectory as the tour was average overall. And really, I can't say that I'm all that surprised. I mean, personally for me, tournaments in general have far more potential to give matches any meaning rather than, say, random television matches like El Phantasmo versus Wheeler Yuta. Even though a match like that has far more than enough potential to seal the entire tour if they really wanted it to. And that's what the majority of New Japan Strong's Collision Tour was, mostly TV matches on their TV show, but labeled under one big name. And I sat through and watched all 4 episodes in succession like it was any other pay-per-view, because these days 4 hours is bordering on the average length of pay-per-view events in wrestling anyways. In the past, New Japan Strong would label their big name events like Collision as a tour, but with the Road 2 events preceding some of the episodes on that tour. And for me, that was always a green light as if to say, hey, you can miss this one. I guess maybe the heads over at New Japan Strong must have caught on because they haven't released an episode of New Japan Strong without a name attached to it in a while. Even their Strong Style Evolved events from earlier this year were non consequential television matches for the most part, and still turned out better than the original Strong Style Evolved events in the past, even for how run of the mill the cards were. Smart of them to do, I'll give it that. And because their show have these new labels attached to them, it's almost as if every round of tapings that they do is like one big New Japan Strong event for me to come back to in a month, only in parts for me to binge through. It's certainly different from, say, an MLW or a Ring of Honor, and it's also true to the nature of New Japan Pro Wrestling shows over in Japan because every tour that they do has a name attached to it. It's just that here, now, they're cutting out the road twos for good, judging by their recent pattern. As for the Collision 2021 tour itself, though, there were 3 matches that were good enough to go out of your way to watch. The first being Jon Moxley and Chris Dickinson versus Yuji Nagata and Ren Narita on the first episode of the tour, which was a good preview match for Moxley and Nagata's United States Heavyweight Championship match on Dynamite. It was great to see Nagata on the show, by the way. The second match worth watching came on episode 2 in a special elimination match between Team Filthy, Carl Fredericks, Brody King, TJP, and Clark Connors. The third best and final match that the entire tour was building to outside of the Moxley vs. Nagata preview tag match was the main event on episode 4 between Tom Lawler and Chris Dickinson for the Strong Openweight Championship. All 3 matches, while great in parts, turned out to be good overall. And shout out to Chris Dickinson for being the MVP of the whole tour. If anybody at all came out better for it, it was Chris because he was inarguably the guy putting his best foot forward, even if it was just for TV at the end of the day. Hikuleo and Fred Rosser had a no disqualification match that I was definitely looking forward to until the match was actually over and I was left disappointed. I'm glad that Fred got the win in what I believe was their rubber match, but I just wish that the match itself lived up to the matches that they had in the past on New Japan Strong, because they were great or even better than great. Here, their match was just okay, even with them battling outside of the New Japan Strong venue, which I don't think is something that's been done before in the short history of the show. It was only if only the table spot went the way that they planned, because then maybe the show would have been better off, because this match would have been better off. Just wound up being more I am the table material for Botchamania, which is unfortunate, or great if you love yourself some Botchamania shows. There were few matches on this tour that were so boring that I almost threw the entire tour into the dumpster because at best they rivaled watching paint dry, specifically with Alex Coughlin versus Bateman on episode 3 and just about every other forgettable tag team match on this tour for that matter. Episode 2, while being just okay, was the best show out of the bunch, even though I can't say any match outside of the main event was good, and the worst episode came in the one that followed in episode 3, and really the only reason that I'd say the show was bad is because of the incredibly dull and boring undercard. Episodes 1 and 4 were both pretty average and nothing to write home about, and really outside of all 3 of Chris Dickinson's performances, that's what the entire New Japan Strong Collision Tour was as a whole in 2021. It was just barely passable for me, and maybe I was even being a bit generous with how slow some of the matches were. I'm still tuning into the next tour though, because it looks like Tom Lawler's next challenger is Carl Fredericks, and Tom's run with the Strong Openweight Championship has more of my interest than just about anything else on the show, so I'm hoping that it'll be worth the watch.